Thunderstorms at the time the AirAsia flight vanished. We know that. And here you can actually see the storm activity. Take a look at this. In the area during the time the plane lost radar contact and then disappeared. This is satellite picture. We know the pilot even asked to change his flight path because of all this severe weather in the area. Joining me now is Kyle Bailey, aviation analyst and FAA licensed pilot. Thank you so much for talking to us. All right, let's talk about the weather conditions at the time of this flight. It seems that this flight was lost due to weather. It is monsoon season, as we know, in the Sumatra Island area, which comes with convective thunderstorm activity. We know that the pilot did radio air traffic control. He wanted to basically lift the flight above the storm. But in order to do that, he would have had to reach some 50,000 feet. He was flying at approximately 32,000. Was this plane equipped for that kind of elevation?
The service ceiling of the airplane is actually about 39,000 feet. So 50,000 feet, it would never get up that high. But even if he was operating above those parameters or above that altitude, it would cause serious problems with the airplane as far as controllability goes, pushing the limits of those parameters.
Okay, talk about the technology on this plane. It was I guess it was serviced in 2009. It went into service. So apparently, as a result, the technology, the radar system would be reliable. But is the radar system on this plane able to detect where there might be a pocket or a hole? Do you believe that perhaps the pilot saw something that didn't actually exist?
Well, that's exactly the case. If the pilots are traveling and they see a thunderstorm, normally they would deviate by about 20 miles around the storm. In this instance, he was probably searching for a hole in the thunderstorm and couldn't find a hole, or was possibly maneuvering too close. To the center of the cell.
Let's talk about the pitot tubes. We've been hearing that word being repeated a lot today, and that's because they were a huge concern with Airbus aircraft for some time. Icing, in fact, being a critical concern after the crash of Air France Flight 447 in 2009. It was an Airbus A330 aircraft. That crashed during a thunderstorm over the Atlantic Ocean, but according to our meteorologist, let's just compare that flight to today's. Rick Reichmuth, our meteorologist, says that icing in this case is almost impossible, even at 32,000 feet, that the temperature would not be cold enough to cause significant icing, so that icing is almost certainly not an issue.
In my opinion, that is exactly right. From what I'm hearing at that altitude, the temperatures would not create icing on the aircraft pitot tube. And we have to remember, too, there are heating elements on that pitot tube and backup systems.
Right.
So the chance of that failing is actually very slim.
Okay, and then if you're running into dangerous weather as a pilot, what do you do? Let's say that you don't rely on that radar. Is it better to fly through the storm instead of trying to climb over them, especially when you consider these storms ranged upward of 20,000 feet above their current altitude?
Well, just basic aeronautics. Make a 180-degree turn and get yourself out of the situation.
Really?
Yeah, but these might have been rapidly developing cells. They might have seen a hole where they thought they could get through, and they were developing so rapidly that it basically closed in on them.
That's interesting, because Eric Sean was just talking to an expert as well, and you brought that up, Eric, that, taking the plane perhaps and flying it around 180 degrees and just basically turning back might be a perfect solution. And our earlier guest didn't necessarily think that would be the solution. So I guess it's pilot decision at the time. Are pilots trained? How are pilots trained to deal with this sort of thing? I mean, is there a certain protocol rather than flying above it, turning around and heading back?
Well, the protocol would be to look for a hole. I mean, the best thing to do is actually to avoid it altogether.
And in this area, it seems impossible because it's monsoon season. I mean, these flights are constantly flying in and out of thunderstorms. Yeah,
that is true. And keep in mind, these pilots in that area, they're doing this every single day, so they have a very tremendous high level of confidence while flying the airplane. It's just very hard to tell at this point.
Right.
They probably thought they could, penetrate without a problem.
Right. And there's also lightning that accompanies these thunderstorms. I mean, is it possible lightning struck one of these aircraft?
Yeah, lightning is pretty common hitting airliners. It's generally not a big event. I mean, a minor concern. But the turbulence in those downdrafts and updrafts, I mean, that's the big problem there.
I mean, severe enough turbulence can rip apart a plane.
Could rip apart the airplane, yes.
A scary thought to imagine with the adults on the plane, 16 children, one infant. It's horrifying.
Very sad.
And our hearts go out to the family as we pray for them today. Thank you very much, Kyle Bailey, for offering some insight.
Thank you, Julie.